And one of them involved an actor friend of mine, and I called him, and he said, "Don't miss it. Just go."
Randolph Scott, one of Hollywood's most iconic Western stars, was born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia. Growing up in a large Southern family, Randolph was surrounded by values that would define his life: discipline, education, and personal integrity. His father, George Grant Scott, worked as a respected textile executive, while his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, was known for her refinement and social grace. Being the second of 7 children, Randolph learned early on the importance of responsibility and self-respect. His childhood, largely spent in Charlotte, North Carolina, instilled in him a quiet confidence, a sense of moral uprightness, and a composure that would later become central to both his on-screen persona and off-screen life. From a young age, Randolph was interested in education and self-improvement, attending private schools before enrolling at the Georgia Institute of Technology and later at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Initially, he intended to follow in his father's footsteps, perhaps entering business or engineering, but life had a different path in store. The allure of California, the vibrant energy of Hollywood in the 1920s, and his natural charisma drew him toward the film industry. Standing tall with an athletic build, refined Southern charm, and striking features, he quickly caught the attention of casting directors. Scott began humbly, working as a film extra and stuntman, taking small speaking roles that required patience, discipline, and perseverance. These early experiences shaped him as an actor who valued craft over fame. After serving honorably as an artillery officer in France during World War I, Scott returned to civilian life with a renewed purpose. His military experience gave him an appreciation for responsibility and courage, traits that would shine both in his real life and on the screen. By the late 1920s, Scott had steadily carved a place for himself in Hollywood, transitioning smoothly into talking pictures thanks to his resonant, commanding voice. He quickly became recognized for his professionalism, humility, and dedication to his craft, distinguishing himself from many contemporaries who chased fame or indulged in celebrity excess. In this early period of his life, Randolph Scott laid the foundation for a career and reputation that would later make him one of the most respected figures in Hollywood, a man whose calm dignity and moral compass would define both his roles and his personal life. The 1930s and 1940s marked a period of immense growth in Randolph Scott's career. Although he appeared in a variety of genres, from dramas and comedies to thrillers, it was a Western that truly cemented his legacy. Films such as The Last of the Mohicans in 1936, Western Union in 1941, and The Desperados in 1943 transformed him into the quintessential cowboy hero, embodying stoicism, integrity, and honor. Scott's Western characters were defined by moral courage and resilience, and audiences came to see him as the archetypal lawman or frontiersman, a man of principle navigating a harsh, unpredictable world. Unlike many actors of his era, Scott avoided the temptations of fame, focusing instead on perfecting his performances. His work with director Bud Boetticher in the 1950s produced some of the finest Westerns ever made, including Seven Men from Now, 1956, Ride Lonesome, 1959, and Comanche Station, 1960. These films highlighted not only Scott's talent, but also his understanding of the Western hero as a man of action who wrestled with past regrets and complex moral choices. Each character Scott played carried a quiet dignity, an internal struggle, and a thoughtful reflection on life and responsibility, which made his performances distinct from the more flamboyant portrayals of his peers. By the time he appeared in Sam Peckinpah's Ride the High Country, 1962, Scott had mastered the art of portraying an aging lawman trying to uphold principles in a world that was changing around him. In that role, the parallel between Scott's real life and his screen persona became unmistakable. He retired gracefully at the height of his career, investing wisely in real estate and business ventures, eventually becoming one of Hollywood's wealthiest actors. Yet, despite financial success, he remained grounded, modest, and devoted to family and faith. This period of Scott's life demonstrates the qualities that distinguish him from other stars: professionalism, patience, and a consistent adherence to personal and professional ethics. His screen presence, already impressive, was complemented by a personal life characterized by stability and quiet dignity, making him a figure of admiration both on and off-the-screen Scott's personal life, particularly his marriages, reflected the same careful consideration and principle that marked his career. In 1936, he married heiress Marion DuPont, a woman from one of America's most prestigious industrial families. Marion brought not only social standing, but also personal accomplishments, including her passion for horse breeding and ownership of Montpelier, a historic Virginia estate once home to President James Madison. Their marriage, though glamorous, was marked by differences in lifestyle and focus. Scott, an emerging Hollywood star, was immersed in his career on the West Coast, while Marion remained deeply rooted in the social and equestrian traditions of the East Coast. The couple often spent time apart, and after 3 years, they divorced amicably in 1939. Despite the split, Marion continued to use the name Marion DuPont Scott, reflecting a lasting connection or mutual respect that endured decades after their marriage. Later, in 1944, Scott married Patricia Stillman, an actress 21 years his junior. This marriage marked a departure from his first, rooted more in genuine affection than in social strategy. Together, they built a stable domestic life, adopting 2 children, Sandra and Christopher, and largely remaining out of the Hollywood spotlight. Scott's devotion to his family and his role as a father stood in stark contrast to many celebrity marriages of the era, which were often fraught with scandal. For 4 decades, the couple maintained a serene and enduring partnership, splitting time between their Beverly Hills home and a ranch near Santa Barbara, where Scott could indulge his lifelong love of horses and the outdoors. Their life together mirrored the strong, dependable qualities Scott brought to his film characters and offered him a personal world of quiet dignity and moral stability that reinforced his public image. Through his marriages, Scott demonstrated that the principles guiding his professional life also informed his private life: loyalty, thoughtfulness, and a measured approach to relationships in Hollywood. The lives of actors often overlap in ways the public never sees, and for Randolph Scott and John Wayne, their paths were marked by more tension than friendship. Fans of Westerns might assume that 2 such towering icons would share mutual respect, but the truth was far more complicated. Randolph Scott, with his refined Southern manners, quiet dignity, and disciplined approach to acting, found little in common with John Wayne, who embodied the showmanship, bravado, and larger-than-life persona that Hollywood loved. While Scott valued subtlety, careful storytelling, and authenticity, Wayne often relied on spectacle, confident gestures, and a strong, attention-commanding presence. This difference in approach was more than professional. It reflected contrasting philosophies about life, work, and integrity. Scott believed that heroism was rooted in internal struggle and moral reflection, while Wayne projected an unshakable, uncomplicated version of bravery that, to Scott, often felt artificial. Beyond their professional differences, the 2 men had clashing personalities. Scott was reserved, modest, and rarely boasted about his accomplishments, preferring to let his performances speak for him. Wayne, by contrast, was outspoken, politically active, and always at the center of attention. He spoke freely about his views, especially his conservative beliefs and patriotic ideals, and was often bold in social settings. For Scott, this loud, dominating style clashed with his own sense of propriety and quiet confidence. Behind the scenes, Scott reportedly avoided Wayne whenever possible. At Hollywood parties, he would politely leave if Wayne arrived. Their mutual acquaintances, including other actors and directors, often felt caught in the middle, careful not to offend either man. Scott's dislike was deeply personal, rooted not only in style and philosophy, but also in what he perceived as hypocrisy. He respected those who worked hard and demonstrated courage in real life, particularly in wartime, but he felt that Wayne's refusal to serve in World War II, coupled with his later portrayal of military heroes on screen, was morally inconsistent. Scott reportedly said, "I didn't judge men who stayed home, but I couldn't stomach those who pretended to fight wars on screen after refusing to serve in one." In Scott's eyes, Wayne's on-screen heroism was theatrical rather than authentic, a product of Hollywood myth-making rather than disciplined storytelling. This fundamental difference created a private, unspoken tension that lasted decades, shaping their professional interactions and, more subtly, the legacy of the Western genre itself. While neither man publicly attacked the other, Scott's disdain was well known among those who worked closely with him. Wayne may have represented the public ideal of rugged masculinity, But Scott embodied the moral subtlety and quiet strength that he felt were often missing from Hollywood's portrayals of heroism. Their feud, though never explosive, was deeply personal, anchored in contrasting values, work ethics, and approaches to life. The feud between Scott and Wayne was as much about philosophy as it was about personality. Randolph Scott prided himself on his craft, often carefully studying scripts, building his characters with nuance, and presenting a strong but understated performance. He believed that true acting required discipline, restraint, and a respect for subtle storytelling. His performances were deliberate, measured, and quiet, demonstrating strength without the need for loud gestures or dramatic flourishes. Scott's cowboy heroes reflected this approach. Men of moral depth who wrestled with choices, regret, and responsibility, mirroring his own life principles. In contrast, John Wayne's style was bold, immediate, and attention-grabbing. Wayne was larger than life, relying on charisma, confidence, and physical presence to draw viewers into his films. His cowboy characters were often fearless, decisive, and morally clear-cut, leaving little room for internal reflection or ambiguity. Where Scott saw integrity and authenticity in the quiet, Wayne thrived on spectacle and assertiveness. The difference in approach extended beyond the screen. Scott was private, modest, and introspective, often avoiding the Hollywood social scene, while Wayne was social, outspoken, and politically active, frequently making headlines for his opinions and actions. Scott, who valued subtlety and internal reflection, was often irritated by Wayne's bombastic patriotism and apparent self-assuredness. The philosophical divide between the two men became evident in interviews and conversations. Scott believed that life, like the frontier, was full of gray areas, moral dilemmas, and personal responsibility, while Wayne's worldview was more black and white, emphasizing courage, action, and straightforward heroism. This fundamental difference in perception and temperament shaped Scott's deep-seated dislike. While they both shaped the Western genre, they did so in opposite ways. Scott through quiet moral strength and nuanced storytelling, Wayne through bravado, spectacle, and patriotic heroism. To Scott, Wayne represented everything Hollywood had come to glorify in appearance rather than substance, a man who achieved fame and adoration without the introspection and discipline that Scott so highly valued. This contrast not only fueled their personal feud, but also highlighted the diversity of Western heroes in American cinema, demonstrating that the genre could accommodate both the subtle and the dramatic, the reflective and the bold. Despite never engaging in a public conflict, Scott's disdain remained clear in personal accounts, anecdotes, and interviews, painting a picture of a man who quietly but firmly rejected the world that Wayne represented. While differences in style and philosophy laid the foundation for the feud, personal interactions further deepened the divide. Randolph Scott reportedly felt disrespected on multiple occasions by John Wayne's offhand comments. Wayne, known for bluntness and a sometimes brash sense of humor, once remarked that Scott was too pretty to play a real cowboy. For Scott, this insult was not only an attack on his acting ability, but a misunderstanding of his approach. Being quiet and controlled was, in Scott's view, the truest form of authenticity, whereas Wayne equated loudness and attention-grabbing behavior with masculinity and heroism. Their interactions at social gatherings and on film sets often ended in tense silence or polite avoidance. Friends and colleagues, such as Gary Cooper and Joel McCrea, occasionally found themselves in uncomfortable positions, careful not to praise one man in front of the other. The feud was subtle but persistent, a private tension that colored professional and social interactions. Scott's moral and philosophical objections to Wayne's behavior only intensified after learning of Wayne's avoidance of military service during World War II. Whereas Scott contributed to the war effort in other ways and held a deep respect for those who served, he viewed Wayne's avoidance as a failure of principle. Coupled with Wayne's on-screen portrayal of fearless heroes, this created a perception of hypocrisy in Scott's mind. He reportedly remarked, "I respected his success, but I never respected the man," encapsulating the difference between professional admiration and personal disdain. Their silent feud became part of Hollywood folklore, a story passed down by industry insiders and biographers, illustrating how two men who shaped an entire genre could simultaneously coexist in conflict without ever needing to confront each other publicly. The tension was rooted in contrasting values: the disciplined craftsman versus the boisterous showman, the reflective moralist versus the public hero, the quiet gentleman versus the loud patriot. This contrast defined not only their relationship, but also the broader cultural perception of Western heroes in American cinema. The silent feud between Randolph Scott and John Wayne, though private, had profound implications for the Western genre in Hollywood. Both men became iconic figures, yet each embodied a different vision of the American frontier. Scott's characters represented moral complexity, internal struggle, and quiet heroism. He often played men who questioned their choices, wrestled with personal regrets, and relied on inner strength rather than outward bravado. Audiences admired his stoicism, sense of integrity, and the understated power he brought to the screen. In contrast, John Wayne's characters were bold, decisive, and heroic in more traditional, unambiguous sense. Wayne's cowboys were fearless, patriotic, and larger than life, commanding attention through sheer force of personality and confident presence. While Scott's performances were subtle, introspective, and layered, Wayne's were immediate, dramatic, and focused on spectacle. The contrast between their approaches added balance to the Western genre, offering audiences multiple interpretations of heroism. Their professional divergence reflected broader cultural themes. Scott's subdued, disciplined style appealed to viewers who admired realism, moral nuance, and quiet courage. Wayne's energetic, theatrical presence resonated with fans who sought inspiration, excitement, and clear-cut depictions of bravery. Together, the two men defined the Western for an entire generation, shaping audience expectations and influencing countless actors who followed. Despite their personal differences, the rivalry, silent as it was, pushed both men to excel in their craft. Producers and studios occasionally compared their box office draws, and though the industry attempted to create a sense of competition, Scott and Wayne were largely uninterested in direct confrontation. Each pursued his own version of success, demonstrating that different approaches to performance and personality could coexist and, in fact, complement each other within a genre that thrived on contrasting forms of heroism. Their feud, though private, became a point of fascination for historians, biographers, and fans, highlighting the nuanced realities behind Hollywood's glamorous facade. For those who studied Western cinema, the differences between Scott and Wayne exemplified how the industry celebrated multiple forms of masculinity and heroism, one grounded in moral subtlety, the other in spectacle and bravado. Ultimately, both men left an indelible mark on the Western genre, demonstrating that contrasting philosophies could coexist and even enrich the cinematic landscape. After retiring from acting in the early 1960s, Randolph Scott lived a life characterized by dignity, stability, and quiet accomplishment. Choosing to leave Hollywood at the height of his career, he avoided the pitfalls of celebrity that ensnared many of his contemporaries. Scott invested wisely in real estate and business ventures, securing his financial future without succumbing to the excesses often associated with fame. He lived primarily between his Beverly Hills home and a ranch near Santa Barbara, indulging his love for horses and the outdoors. In private, Scott remained humble, grounded, and deeply devoted to his family. His marriage to Patricia Stillman endured for more than 4 decades, and together they raised 2 adopted children, Sandra and Christopher. Friends and colleagues frequently commented on the warmth and stability of his home life, contrasting sharply with the turbulent personal lives of many Hollywood stars. Even in retirement, Scott remained reflective about his career and the industry, often sharing candid insights about his experiences. In interviews, he spoke of the discipline required to succeed in Hollywood, the importance of moral consistency, and the need for integrity both on screen and off. His thoughts on John Wayne, though delivered carefully, remained frank. While he respected Wayne's success, he never admired the man personally. Scott's reflections highlight the depth of his principles. He valued substance over appearance, quiet accomplishment over loud spectacle, and ethical consistency over public adoration. These traits, which had defined both his life and his career, contributed to a lasting reputation as one of Hollywood's most respected figures. Scott passed away in 1987 at the age of 89 due to heart and lung ailments. He was buried alongside his wife Patricia in Charlotte, North Carolina. Even decades later, his papers, including photographs, letters, notes, and scrapbooks, remain preserved at UCLA, offering historians and fans a detailed look into the life of a man who embodied dignity, professionalism, and moral consistency throughout his long and distinguished career. The story of Randolph Scott and John Wayne offers a fascinating window into Hollywood's golden age and the contrasting visions of heroism that shaped the Western genre. Scott, a man of quiet dignity, discipline, and moral integrity, contrasted sharply with Wayne, whose larger-than-life personality, bold patriotism, and showmanship defined his cinematic presence. While Scott focused on nuance, reflection, and internal moral struggle, Wayne emphasized spectacle, confidence, and unambiguous courage. Their private feud, though never publicly dramatic, exemplifies how personal differences can coexist with professional respect and even influence the broader cultural landscape. The tension between their approaches ultimately enriched the Western genre, offering audiences multiple interpretations of heroism, courage, and morality. Scott's commitment to authenticity and subtlety influenced generations of actors, demonstrating that a measured, disciplined approach to craft could be just as impactful as a bold, attention-commanding presence. Wayne's embodiment of larger-than-life heroism ensured that audiences remained captivated by action, spectacle, and unwavering confidence. Together, these two men illustrate the diversity of talent, philosophy, and personality that fueled Hollywood's golden era. Their legacies endure not only through their films, but also through the lessons their lives offer. That success is measured not only by fame or box office, but by discipline, integrity, and the ability to stay true to one's values. Randolph Scott's lifelong devotion to family, craft, and principle stands as a reminder that quiet strength often speaks louder than boisterous performance, and that respect for one's work, moral consistency, and personal dignity can leave a lasting impression on both the industry and the audience. Meanwhile, John Wayne's iconic presence continues to inspire admiration for confidence, decisiveness, and larger-than-life heroism. Together, the contrasting lives of these two Western legends remind us that the American frontier, whether on screen or in life, was never a place of simplicity alone. Heroism comes in many forms, and the measure of man can be found in both quiet reflection and bold action. Randolph Scott was born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia. Raised in a disciplined, well-educated Southern family, he learned the value of integrity, humility, and hard work. His father was a respected textile executive, and his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, a woman of refinement. As the second of 7 children, Scott grew up with a strong sense of responsibility and quiet confidence. He attended private schools and later studied at Georgia Tech and UNC Chapel Hill, originally planning to follow in his father's footsteps, but fate had Hollywood in store for him. After serving as an artillery officer in World War I, Scott returned to the U.S. with a renewed sense of purpose. During a visit to California in the early 1920s, he was captivated by the growing film industry. With his tall, athletic frame, striking features, and Southern charm, he started as an extra and stuntman before earning small speaking roles. By the late 1920s, he had broken into talking pictures, his deep, resonant voice helping him stand out. Scott's early years were marked by patience, discipline, and humility, traits that defined both his life and his screen persona. By the 1930s and 40s, Scott was a rising star in Hollywood, but it was Westerns that made him a legend. Films like The Last of the Mohicans, 1936, Western Union, 1941, and The Desperados, 1943, cemented his image as a quintessential